Hey everybody, welcome back to another quick episode today of Making It Fun. I'm your host, Rob Appell from Michael Miller Fabrics, and I am super excited you're here. Today I just want to do a quick technique called curved piecing. Now, I am not the inventor of such a fun technique. As a matter of fact, the first place I saw it was 1.5 million years ago, way back when my good friend Mr. Ricky Timms and I were both young gentlemen and playing in the early world of quilt making. Now, Ricky calls it the caveman style of curve piecing. I love it because it's a freestyle method, so we're not going to use any rulers or templates. We're just going to use a rotary cutter, and I'm going to show you today using some of my wonderful Michael Miller print fabrics. And I want to use prints because all of my cutting is going to be done right sides up. Now, this technique you can use and expand your whole library of design and quilting, but when you do it and start practicing, I want you to use fairly short strips. So these were chopped off of fat quarters, so these are going to be 22 inches long. Down the road, I've done plenty of cutting curves and sewing of curves that were 44 inches long, so the width of the goods. But when you're starting out, and you'll see in a moment why I say this, I want you to start with no longer strips than 22-inch pieces. So we're going to take the first piece we have, and let's just use a really long, wide, really obvious line on our cutting mat. We're going to use this to marry our overlap of our two pieces. So I'm going to let this purple piece of fabric overlap by at least 1 inch here. Okay, and then I'm going to take a green contrasting fabric so it'll be easy for us to see, and I'm going to let it overlap 1 inch on the other side of that line, so effectively hopefully having a 2-inch overlap, because I'm going to cut down the center of this. Now on your very first one, you might want to actually just set these right on top of each other, and as a matter of fact, let's just do that together the first time. We'll do a few of these. Okay, so the reason I want to start this way is because by cutting through here, we'll have 2 practice samples. So let's rotate this so we're not using the selvage at all. And one of the first tricks I really like is a safety, but also a efficiency at the sewing machine, a good starting point. So even though we're going to do curves, I start with a straight cut. So I'm going to come down here and I'm just going to do a nice gradual, and that's one of the keys, is just an easy cut through. But I'm going to start here by going about 1 inch, maybe even 2, in a straight direction. And then I'm going to put my hands back here to hold my fabric stable. And then I'm going to do a nice, easy, gradual curve. And just a reminder, both fabrics are right sides up right now. What I'm going to now do is separate them, and then I'm going to mix and match them. So this green piece will go together with this purple piece, and this green piece and this purple piece will go together just like that. Let me show you. Now we're going to start down here where that straight cut was, because that gives us the opportunity to start on our 1/4 inch with what we would normally know as a straight seam. If you've never done curves before, if you start right on a curve, it looks like they're overlapping or crossing, and sometimes it's a little hard to get a good start point. And because we're going to free piece this together, we're not going to use any pins. So I'm going to top stitch up here, and I'm looking at my 1/4 inch seam allowance right here on my stitch plate, and I'm going to hold one fabric with one hand and one fabric with the other, and I will literally be doing like a braiding feel or braiding technique to let these curves come together as I go. So we're just going to sew through that first straight, and now I'm just going to massage the green onto the purple to go along the outside of the curve, and try to stay as consistent with your 1/4 inch as possible. And then as we come up here to the top, we're going to bend down I normally use an edge guide, but sometimes the edge guide will get in the way of the machine when we come back the other direction. And I'm also not pulling on either fabric. I'm just going to let them marry together. And when you're first learning the technique, the more gradual the curve, the more successful your stitching will be. You'll notice I'm also going at a fairly nice and soft pace at the machine. Slow pace, I should say. And I'm going to finish out with a back stitch. Okay, now the second part of this technique, which I think is actually very important as well, we're going to do at the ironing system, or the ironing board I should call it. So when I come over here now, I still want to press to the dark side, but I'm going to use the tip instead of the edge of the iron. So I'm going to use this little tip up here to first come in here and set the curve by ironing with the tip only up against that curve, but then using the back of the iron to kick the top piece of fabric over and press it into submission. Now, I'm not going to clip my curves. You could if you wanted to, but there really is no reason for this in this technique of curve piecing. And look at how awesome that looks. Now, I'm going to point out real quickly, and you'll see this start to happen as we've put in a few more pieces. The fabrics will start to shift and warp a little bit. You can see it's not a perfect rectangle anymore. So you want to account for that. So the working portion of this that's super square is going to have a couple inches chopped off at either end. Or what you can do is you sew on 3, 4, 5 curved strips, and then you'll square it, sew on 3, 4, 5 curved strips and square it if you're doing a build as you go style quilt, which works beautifully. So let me show you how to do this one more time. We're just going to go ahead and take these two pieces that were the leftover curves. We're going to go ahead and match those on that straight edge. Come back over to my machine, setting up for a 1/4 inch seam allowance, keeping a nice, even, steady pace on the machine, watching my 1/4 inch out front. Now braiding the top fabric over the bottom fabric through that curve. Now braiding the lower fabric under the top fabric for this curve. Not pulling on either fabric. Finishing out in my curve. Using the tip of the iron to set and make that awesome. But I promised you a little trickier cutting setup. That's where we were starting, and then I jumped right in the middle of my two strips. So let's marry these two super cool curved strips together as I was trying to show you before, where we're going to use an obvious line on our mat, and I'm going to give myself a 1 inch overlap going that direction. And I want to marry my purple to my green, so now I'm bringing in, this is the advantage, right sides up, right sides together. I'm going to overlap this here. I'm going to still start with my straight cut, and now my straight cut is on that obvious line basically, or pretty dang close to it. I know that's the middle of my splice as I go straight here. And then the only thing I really kind of want to do now is I don't want to completely follow either the top or the bottom cut too much, because I don't want it to just like hourglass the whole way through. I want it to look very organic. So now I'm going to remove this piece, come to patch this together where the straight line came together. Let's sew this together and see how it turns out. Having this straight at the beginning, even if it's only for 1 inch, gives you just a great start, and that way you know that you're going to be in the correct position in your curves. Now as you get more and more pieces together or wider strips, you can see it's a little harder to see where you're going. So just take it nice and slow. And I'm just pressing this over for the big reveal. And now you can see how awesome and cool those curves look and how simple this technique is to do. So your reminder or your points really are is your fabrics are just right sides up. And when you're learning the technique, start with shorter strips so that you don't have as far to cut and so things don't shift apart on the long ends. You might need to anchor it if you're using those 45-inch strips. That was what I found down the road. Other than that, take a nice slow pace. Don't use your edge guide so that you can move your fabrics over each other so that you can just braid them together or ease them through the curves. Should be super, super simple. Of course, I am super glad you were here for this basic technique today. Please subscribe to Making It Fun. This video channel is awesome and we want to help spread the word. Hit the little like button and we will see you next time. I've got one more of these little things coming up all about free piecing. I think you're gonna love it. See you real soon. Adios, amigos. I'm glad to see you're still there. Hey, if you insist on spending all day on YouTube, great with me. Please check out a few of my other videos. I think they're fantastic. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell to be notified. We'll see you next time for another helping of fun.